Welcome to the Retrospect podcast, a show where people come together from different walks of life and discuss a topic from their generation's perspective. My name is Ian, and as always, I'm joined by Stoney.
Hello.
And Jason.
Hello, everyone.
Would you like to introduce our guest today?
Yeah, well, we have a special guest today. I had the pleasure of meeting her at an unrelated event regarding our topic today, and we started talking about this, and I said, she would make a great guest for the show. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce to our listeners Miss Ashley Rankins.
Hi, guys.
Hi. Nice to meet you.
I'm Ashley. I'm so thankful that you all allowed me to come on today.
Well, thankful you came.
Yeah,
a long drive out here to the studio.
Thank you so much. And I believe what we're going to talk about today is a big topic, very serious topic, and it's something that a lot of people are a little nervous to talk about. But we're going to talk about mental health.
Going into May, and apparently that is Mental Health Awareness Month, and so I think there's going to be a couple of episodes in this month we're going to focus on that sort of topic or that sort of talking point a little bit, and what better way to start off this month with, a professional in that field.
Absolutely.
Going straight into it.
Love it.
Ashley, please let us know all about mental health.
Well, I do want to set the record. I'm more of an advocate. I am pursuing a degree in forensic psychology at the moment, getting my doctorate in that space. But I speak more from a person that's dealing with this illness type of scenario. So I don't really have all the facts as it pertains to mental health, just experience.
Okay, great. Can you tell us about you, some of your background?
Absolutely. So I come from a small city in Louisiana. It's called Amite, Louisiana. Real country, real small. And so, when my mom decided to move, I moved into Baton Rouge, and it's such a fast cultured space. And in growing, I noticed that, there was just something different about who I was.
Okay.
And so once I became aware of the different things that I was going through, I learned that it was, a mental health issue. It became diagnosed as bipolar 1.
Okay.
And so the stigma around that led me to believe that I was misdiagnosed. But because I felt as if I was misdiagnosed, I wouldn't comply with what the doctors would say because, I was like, yeah, this doesn't apply to me. And each time that I would have like a manic episode, I'd end up in the hospital, and I'd be like, you guys are off. Something's off about you. But what you don't realize is that with mania, it's like a grandiose behavior. So it's like, yeah, I did this and it's okay. People make mistakes. And so it took me about 4 times to be hospitalized to be like, okay, maybe they are the experts and maybe they do know what's going on. But in accepting the diagnosis, I also had to understand that I had to accept it my way. I couldn't just take what the doctors were saying. I just couldn't go forth with the medicine, because sometimes the medicine would make me feel like I wasn't even, it made me feel real zombie-ish.
Okay.
So I had to find different coping skills, and I think in that space, that's kind of like where I show my expertise, because other people who go through this as well, they call me to, assist them in, with their coping.
Okay. Well, somebody who's never truly experienced it for themselves, it can be real easy, but there's no one size fits all for everybody in mental illness. Because even though it may be the same diagnosis for 10 different people, each one of those people are going to feel it and experience it a different way.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that's age related, that's culture related, that's so many different, ways that they can experience that differently. And it's very confusing when you don't know. It's when you're sick and you don't know what it is, and I'm not talking about mental illness being sick, I'm just saying if you have a cold and you don't know what it is or something, well, mental illness is even further because you really don't know what it is.
Exactly. I actually had a conversation with a friend maybe Tuesday or Wednesday of last week, and I said, although this is called like a bipolar disorder, I feel like it really should be recategorized as situational.
Okay.
Because some people can adapt to different rooms, and that doesn't necessarily mean that they're bipolar. That just means that, they can adapt. They have the adaptability. So I speak with my doctor a lot, and now that I'm in these courses, these psychology courses, I'm like, this theory doesn't really apply. And so it's a real strange place to be studying it, to be living with it, and to advocate for it, because I don't necessarily want to go against the doctors, but at the same time, I have to be honest to who I am.
Mm-hmm.
And so, so that's
Okay.
how it's been going.
Mm-hmm. How long has that been? Like, how long has that process been going since like you kind of got first diagnosed to you're now being an advocate in that space?
So I was diagnosed in about 2019, and I fully think that I accepted it in about 2021.
Okay, wow.
And it wasn't something that I really wanted to accept because
Right.
of the stigma that's around it. And so when I accepted the stigma, I accepted the space to also advocate for it, because
Right.
I needed people to understand that you could be all that you are and still suffer with something of this magnitude, but that doesn't take away from who you are. And so that's just the space that I've been living in it in. Like I may take my medicine sometimes, and I may not take my medicine. Sometimes I'll cope with self-care. Sometimes I'll cope with other things that make me feel good, because I think that's the basis of mental health, making sure that you feel good, because that's just the facts.
Mm-hmm.
Wow. We've done a couple episodes that have run into the self-care and self-help and things like that. So definitely recognize that part of it.
Yeah.
So.
Well, I've got some stats.
No,
That
you
doesn't surprise
really?
anybody.
No.
I mean, I'm just, I have to say, just FYI, we talked about, National Mental Health Month. It's in May, but it was established in 1949.
Really? Wow.
Oh, okay.
So it's been around
Didn't
for a
know
while.
I
Yep.
didn't know either.
Yeah, it was to increase awareness of importance of mental health and wellness in American lives, and to celebrate recovery from mental illness. So, I've got something here. The most common category of mental health disorders in America. Do y'all know?
Right. Oh, so what is the most common?
Yeah, y'all know?
Out of the 300, please advise which ones they are.
Well, it says here anxiety disorders.
Okay,
Oh,
I
yeah.
believe that. Yeah.
I was going to say that or some sort of depressive something.
Depression actually worldwide.
Really?
It's the leading one.
Wow, that makes sense.
Yes. But they say it impacts approximately 40 million, million adults 18 and older. Some sort of anxiety disorder.
Right.
And basically causes people to experience distressing and frequent fear and apprehension.
Yeah.
But the most important and the biggest ones are schizophrenia and psychosis, bipolar, borderline personality disorder, obsessive compulsive disorder, post-traumatic stress disorder, PTSD, and complex PTSD, eating disorders, dissociative disorders, severe depression and anxiety, and the most deadly mental illness. You know what that one is?
I do not.
Anorexia.
Oh,
Wow.
wow.
Yep. The death rate is the highest of all mental illnesses.
Wow.
So, I mean, we all saw the story. We probably remember the story of Karen
Karen
Carpenter.
Carpenter. Yeah.
She kind of made that whole
She
thing
brought it to the
famous.
front
She
line.
brought it to
Yeah.
the front about
Yeah.
what people will do to their bodies.
Yeah.
One of the most beautiful voices ever on this planet.
Yes. It was terrible. I remember watching that and just how sad to watch somebody just waste away. You know, you can tell somebody you're skin and bones, but in their eyes they're like overweight.
Yeah.
You know, because of how their brain is processing visual cues and all these things. So it's terrible. But yeah, I mean, there's a lot of information on mental health.
Yeah.
Also, just FYI, the color is green.
It is green.
That's why I have a.
Oh,
no,
yeah.
Our audience doesn't see it, but I'm wearing a green T-shirt.
There you go.
Because I was fixing to walk out the door, and I had a blue shirt on. I said, "Let me go back and get
There
a
you
green
go.
shirt to wear that in solidarity with those that are right now that are suffering with all sorts of mental disorders." I mean, I've got family members that, or have these problems, and it's sad. I know in some of my work with, I've mentioned before, and going out and picking up trash with Keep Tiger Town Beautiful.
Right.
I run across lots of homeless people, and a lot of these people are obviously mental cases.
Yeah.
And it's very difficult to kind of really connect with them because they're just off in left field.
Yeah.
I mean, they really are. I talked to a particular gentleman several times. He lives underneath an overpass. He's a veteran, and I mean, they're fixing to actually seal up some of these overpasses.
Oh,
and these people are fixing to get. And I told, last conversation I had with him, I said, look, you need to be in a shelter. You don't need to be living underneath an overpass. But in his mind, he says, I can keep this area 72 degrees. And this was during the middle of winter. And he said, well, I can keep this area at 72 degrees. I don't want to go anywhere. And I mean, he's literally, it looks like a garage sale underneath which is a blight. There's litter all over the place. It's destroying the environment. But just trying to get some of these people to possibly be somewhere else can be quite tough.
Yeah.
And as I said, I don't know what the answer is. I mean, it's a very complex issue. It's a funding issue.
Definitely a funding issue.
I think a lot
of money is just not there right now for it.
A lot of it too. I mean, I think in recent years we've been a lot better about talking about mental health and kind of destigmatizing a lot of it. But like, it's surprising to hear that Mental Health Awareness Month came out in what you said, 49?
49.
And I feel like there was like a long period of time where like it was very taboo to be have some sort of mental health.
Back then, treatment was very easy. The doctors prescribed you a Valium and sent you on your way.
Right.
Go away.
Or even,
it's not, or if that.
Or even before medicine. I mean, we all saw stories of electric shock therapies and all these things that they were doing.
And men weren't even allowed to talk about it. That was mostly just for the female component to this. And men were just suck it up and go about your day. Yeah. And now it's, and I wonder how much of this is, I mean, it's economic, it's social, but with the amount of chemicals that we're adding to our body on a day-to-day basis, I wonder if that's not part of this because it's getting more prevalent. It's becoming, how many kids now have ADHD? How many more things are coming? 70 years ago, bread had 3 ingredients in it. Now it has over 40 ingredients, and none of them are man-made. They're all petroleum-based. They're all non-pronounceable things that we can't. I wonder if we're doing this, not helping ourselves out with that. How much of this could be chemical related?
Just to kind of wrap up what I was talking about was the fact that there was like a stigma for a long period of time. I know a lot of friends of mine, a lot of musicians and artists and other things like that have families that I, not a professional, cannot have the authority to say this, for a fact, but hereditary mental health problems between like the grandmother and the mother or father or whatever, and then of course their children as well, and they all just cope with it or deal with it or again they try to make ends meet in some way, but they're obviously struggling and having a hard time with all that kind of stuff. But we're not allowed to say that they have a problem because they don't want to go get help. They don't. It's taboo still in their mind from their generation to admit that they have a problem or that they're wrong. And of course, you've got this person that's now like in my age bracket that of course won't go receive help because again, it's a whole they're
Well, you always heard
So,
when
yeah.
your grandmother was talking and somebody had to go away and
Mhm.
using the
Yeah.
fingers in quotes for the
Yeah.
weekend or for a week, you knew they were going to a mental facility to be looked at or,
Right.
and so it was always the vacation or away for the weekend or something. And, now you can openly talk about it, where back then you didn't talk about it.
Right.
Yeah, as far as like the generational curses that I see, honestly, I think that people have, I am a woman of faith, but I think that people have centered themselves around praying their way out of this type of a situation when things are going on in their mind. And without them going to get an expert's opinion, it just lingers. And the problem never goes away. And so it is passed down. Like, these issues are passed down genetically. And like, even in my family, I was trying to get to the bottom of where did it stem from. And like, everybody was like, not me, not me, not me. But in my mind and in my research, it's like, I know this is genetic. So in order for us to address it, we have to be truthful about what's really going on. So like, it's very important to pay attention to the signs. And although, you may never get the answer that you want from, those people that are, your grandparents, your mom, you just have to know for yourself, like, this isn't a good space. And a lot of people don't like therapy. They say that therapy makes them weak. Therapy means you're crazy. We go to the gym. And some people consider gym to be their therapy for their body, for fitness.
Right.
But we also need like therapy for our minds.
Right.
Like, there's so much. We have so many racing thoughts. Like, for people who are entrepreneurs, students, just creators, like, something's always going on in our mind. And even if you don't deal with a mental illness, you still have to take care of your mental health, because that is very important. And anything can shift your mental health, and when it shifts your mental health, it throws you off. And so like, earlier you were saying that mental health was like a sickness, and you was like not trying to compare it to one, but it is indeed a sickness, and you have to treat it the same way that you would treat your body. Almost like, when you feel like you're getting to a space to where you're overwhelmed, you need to rest. You need to just, be able to take care of yourself in those spaces. I think that's like so important. Like, and even with depression, like, everything builds up on top of each other. So that's why a lot of people have co-occurring disorders, because it builds into something. I know at my first encounter with a mental facility, they also wanted to say that I was schizophrenic because of the way I was thinking. Like, I could be thinking about one thing said, and then like in a whole nother space jump stories, and they were like, this is, schizophrenic. And I was like, no, I'm just having like racing thoughts, and I'm just being honest with you.
Right.
And so honesty, when you're dealing with something like this, is not always best, because they use everything that you say is held against you.
All right, of course. Yeah, that's hard.
Yeah.
It probably makes it a lot harder, again, to be honest with yourself or to be honest with a doctor whenever you feel like they're kind of working against you.
Yeah, it's so hard to be transparent in those situations, because you're voluntarily taking yourself there.
Yeah.
But the wrong answer could get you seed, and so that goes from 3 days to 5 days, and then it's just an endless cycle.
Especially like in your situation where you originally didn't even want to believe that it was
exactly
true, and so that's
like, this is
that's
overwhelming. It's very overwhelming, and so like, it does take a long time to weigh in on the fact that, okay, this is really happening to me.
Yeah.
But it shouldn't have like a negative stigma around it, because you're in a space to where you need help, and you could get that help without the fear of people judging you. Like, a lot of the times, like, as an advocate, I always have to worry about someone seeing me in a different space and saying, oh, you're the girl who has bipolar, right? No, I'm just a woman. I suffer from this disorder sometimes, but I also try to use it as my strength.
Right.
So yeah, in certain rooms it doesn't feel good, but I feel good to be able to come in spaces like this and be able to be a positive advocate for it.
Right, exactly.
Well, I think it's easier to get help from somebody that actually truly understands it from maybe even personal experience than someone who went and got some book knowledge
Yeah.
and hasn't experienced it for themselves to try to tell me how to fix this.
Right.
You have a very unique way to help people now, because they can look at you from experience and go, wow, if you could do it, so can I.
Right.
And even at the very least, being able to communicate effectively, like you were saying, you say the wrong thing,
Yeah.
and of course you're categorized as something different. Is like someone that can help somebody see that and go, say it more like this to get the point across.
But you also won't do it from a judgmental aspect too. Like, well, I'm just trying to find a way to put you in a trick bag so I can keep you for 3 more days or 7 more days and make some money off of the system by keeping you. You're actually going to try to help somebody in a beneficial way for them.
Yeah, absolutely. Any time that I can advocate, it's like someone younger than me that's going through this, is where my heart really feels good, because we don't have a lot of education in this space for our young adults,
Right.
And so when they are diagnosed, when they're an adult, they go through that phase of, this doesn't correlate to what I'm really going through. But when you sit there and you read the facts and you see what this actually is, so bipolar is actually a categorization of depression and mania. So it's not, it shouldn't be stigmatized the way it is, because people think all the time. People have racing thoughts all the time. Depression is situational. So if you were to get into a situation in which you felt like you were trapped, you're going to also experience depression. You may not get the diagnosis because it doesn't last as long. But I think that, common everyday people go through phases of depression. Even talking right now, I may have a little anxiety because of, just having a talk, public speaking, everyone gets a little anxiety. So I just want people to understand that.
I love that, the situational part of it, because of my accident last June and the things that have come about it, I've been now diagnosed with anxiety and the possibilities of depression. I'm not a depressive person. But
it's situational.
It's a situational. And so a lot of the things that are happening because of that have affected me. I do experience anxiety now. And I don't really want to talk about it. I don't want to express it, because I don't want people looking at me a certain way.
Exactly.
And I'm glad that you came to offer, and we could offer you a safe space, and I'm comfortable talking to you. And I can say that out loud, because to be honest with you, I really haven't said it before.
Wow.
And I sit there with this paper that has this diagnosis on it, and I'm like, this is not me.
Right.
This is not me.
Wow.
And it's scary. It can be scary.
It is so terrifying, because of what is attached to. If these disorders were attached to, this person has this. Oh, but they're also a millionaire. Oh, but they're also thriving. If we were to hear the positives, impact that the people that have these disorders are making, then I don't think that it'll be so negative. But every time you hear about someone dealing with this disorder is referencing something that's negative.
Right.
And so it's very important that, like, I try to shed light on the positive things that I do. Like, I'm always involved in something positive. So even if my mental health was thrown into the category, I mean, it's really not a question, because you can't take from who I am as a person. So I think that's amazing. And, like I said, your situations are your situations, and the way that you deal with them. I'm so proud that you are able to say that, and to be honest and transparent of the fear that comes with the stigma of those diagnoses, because that's what it is that's triggering everyone, the fear of it. It's not necessarily the name or anything that comes with it. It's the fear of the stigma that comes with the diagnosis.
Well, one of the things when we started this show, and I believe we've kept going with it, is the authenticity and the genuineness of what we do. This is one of the first times that we've had this opportunity to talk about this. I'm very glad to do that. But we've been very genuine about things on this show, and it's a great opportunity to be able to do that. And in the month of May, mental health awareness is to maybe bring some of this to light,
right,
and maybe combat some of that stigma and say, hey, this is real. We all can go through it.
Yeah.
because at 60 years old, I never thought that this would happen to me.
Mm-hmm.
But it's there, and it's in front of me, and it's black and white with a doctor's signature on it. And I'm going, oh, wow, are you kidding me?
Are you really the expert here? That's what I asked my doctor. I said, are you really the expert? Because this doesn't sound anything like me.
But then when you look at it, it can be me. And like you said, it progresses, and because of the situations around you, you know, and the people I keep around me and things like that. I have very helpful people, very positive, supporting people. I'm very blessed in that aspect to have some of the most amazing, supportive people on the planet in my life. Mm-hmm. And that gives me hope.
Yeah. That's
so
great.
You being here today and us being able to talk about that, my hope is that we can make one person feel that way.
Right.
If we can help one person feel okay with that and comfortable enough to maybe reach out and get some help, to talk about it with some people, or to find some supportive people for you.
Yeah.
Like maybe if we could do that, how fantastic would that be?
Yeah, that'd be real awesome.
That would be great, wouldn't it?
Well,
Jason looks like he's got a couple more statistics for us here. Come on.
You know, I'm kind of reviewing all this generational outlook of how we view mental health and all these things. But it says the incidence of negative emotions is particularly high among Gen Z, which reports rates of anxiety, stress, sadness, and loneliness at least 7 percentage points higher than those of millennials, Gen X, baby boomers, and the silent generation. Wonder why that is.
I've said this before, and I think a lot of it is like the lack of physical spaces for people to hang out in a lot. I'm not sure that's the sole reason, but a lot of everyone's relationships are now online. Everything is online. Everything is on the internet, on the phone, or whatever. There's not a lot of, I think, physical person-to-person interactions. If there are, it's very minimal, I feel like. And I think a lot of that is, I think people people more than anything else need to belong and need to be appreciated. And I think in that younger generation, I think that's a big thing. It's not.
And we've talked about this. I'm a firm believer that the digitalization of our lives, whereas people of my generation, Stoney's generation, even to a degree, maybe the older members of your Ian, we interacted with people, I think, and I do believe that our lives have become so compartmentalized in a digital world that there's no human contact.
Right, that's what I'm saying,
I do believe that that's happening.
Yeah.
But I came from the generation that I don't give a shit what anybody thinks about me. If you got something with me, come beat my ass.
Oh, Lord.
And now people today, like Ian said, we're always online. There's some people with some massive internet cojones that if you actually saw them on the street couldn't back that up, or they wouldn't be able to say the things that they do. So you're not building real, genuine relationships either.
Yeah.
You're not having real connections with people. And
I mean, it just blows my mind.
Didn't we do an episode on technology, ruining relationships or something? And
I think that's all
it's intertwined.
I'm looking at here. It says this is an APA survey in 2023. It says, talking about stress levels. 18 to 34-year-olds saying their average stress level is a 6 out of 10 compared to 3.4 among people ages 65 and older.
There you go.
I wonder why. Why young people feel so stressed?
Because they care what people think. I don't.
I think it's more. It's also.
Well, I know it's probably a little bit more nuanced than that.
Yeah.
I mean,
I think a lot of it. I mean, like obviously we're in a different age right now. When it comes to like inflation and it comes to the world as a whole, I feel like there's a lot of stuff going on. There's a lot of other things to be stressed about. Whereas like once upon a time, like you could just be worried about what was in your neighborhood. You could just be worried about what's going on around you. But now I feel like if anybody is even a little bit on the internet, you get the entire weight of the world's problems on your shoulder. I feel like on top of that, like how am I going to pay for food and my bills? So I think that there's a lot of different things that go into it. But the point in which I was kind of talking about the fact of communities with people like reaching out and engaging like person to person. we've also seen, like, I think we've talked about the statistics on the show of like people not attending church as much, people not, engaging in other sort of like community groups like that in such a way. And I feel like that's one of those things that I feel like plays a little bit into it as well, of like not feeling like you have a place or a group of people you can come together with and do something with, especially, like I said, younger generations that are, they may have something like that online, but like what is that place that they can go to, they can be themselves person to person with somebody.
Well, it says here, according to this report, Harmony Healthcare IT, 61% of Gen Z have been medically diagnosed with an anxiety condition.
Mm-hmm.
That's incredible.
Sounds about right. Yep.
61%?
Mm-hmm. And I think some of that, I think some of it is
just, it's unbelievable.
Because I think some of it is probably plays into the idea of they're more okay talking about it. Mm-hmm. So how much more of those older generations probably also do have a higher percentage, but they're not allowed to talk about it, or they feel that stigma, whereas opposed to the younger generations, they don't.
Right.
That could play some into it as
well,
well,
I think they're probably a little bit more open to it.
Right, yeah.
I found,
but it's crazy that people that are that young are dealing with that sort of stuff when you feel like.
I always like to look at how generations view certain things, and here, and this, I pulled this up online. Of course, the first generation, it's a silent generation. They were born 1928 to 1945. Those were the people that didn't talk about it at all.
No.
None. It was
they didn't have time for it.
It was a sign of, it was viewed as a sign of weakness.
Yeah, they didn't have time for it. They were working on the farm, and they were busting their butts from sun up to sundown. Right. So
baby boomers, from 46 to 64, they experienced a significant cultural shift during their lifetime. They, I see, they were kind of the deinstitutionalization of mental health. Because, before that, like what I said, people were locked away in padded rooms and electric shock therapy and some of those things you see in haunted houses they made.
That was the quote. Somebody went somewhere for a brief period of time because they went to the institution.
It says many boomers are influenced by the idea that mental health issues can be resolved through personal growth and self-help. While some embrace therapy and self-exploration, others remain skeptical of psychiatric medications, and it basically says there's a huge diversity within that group. Generation X, 65 to 80, which would be me, we grew up in a time where divorce rates were skyrocketing.
Yeah,
we were known as the latchkey generation. We were the first to experience the rise of self-help movements and the stigmatization of mental health issues. While some are open to therapy and mental health support, others may still carry a degree of skepticism, believing that they should tough it out on their own. Which I can understand that. That's my group. I can see that. Millennials from 81 to 96 have grown up in a time of rapid technological change and increasing mental health awareness. They tend to be more open and accepting of discussing mental health issues. Social media and the internet have given them access to information and resources about mental health. As a result, they are more likely to seek help and support when needed. Mental self-advocacy and self-care are central themes for many in this generation. And then Generation Z from 97 to 2012, they've grown up in a world that's even more connected with technology and social media. They have a wealth of information at their fingertips and are generally very open about their mental health challenges. Conversations around mental health are common, and many are advocates for breaking the stigma surrounding it. They have a strong belief in the importance of mental well-being. So, I can see that's perfect. That's interesting to watching how the change in generations as it comes. So, there's still hope for Stoney and I.
Yeah.
Of course.
So, we are a generational show, so it's good to bring in some of that stuff to kind of bridge the gap between different age groups and how, because we do. I look at mental health a little differently than probably you do, and Miss Rankins here. So it's
I definitely do.
and you definitely do, and probably your parents before you looked at it completely different also.
Right. And that's what I was meaning when I talked about it a little earlier in the show, was like I had a friend of mine, and I can see that he may have issues. But again, I'm not a professional. I don't know all that kind of stuff. I'm not going to diagnose a friend of mine or whatever. But then I get the chance to see his mother and the struggles that she goes through, and then I get to see his grandmother and the struggles that possibly she goes through, and like the whole family, and how there's siblings involved with this person that also have certain underlying issues, and their failure to really thrive in their own way because they're their own mental inhibitions or whatever or stopping them from potentially doing their best. And it's like anytime you try to bring it up, it feels like it's really oh no, we brush it under the rug, we don't talk about that around here. And I was like, okay, so we're not allowed to to
talk about problems.
Yeah, right.
And it's a problem
to talk about those
it's
kind of problems when it really feels like there's something here. You can go to a professional, and again, but it all comes down to the fact you have to admit, just like you were saying, you have to kind of admit that you have a problem, and from the grandmother down, it has been we don't talk about that because that's not what we have kind of thing, and so it's very much stuck in their way of,
Well, I mean,
but we're also in the generations of I can always blame somebody else for it too.
Right.
Back in my generation, that was your fault. You did that. Now we can blame it on other things, mental illness because of socioeconomic, different things. We can always blame it, and now I have a crutch, and so I'm going to bring it out here. Where in my time, like you said, rub some dirt on it and move on. You just go, and you don't.
Well, it's like any problem. I think there's always excesses to everything.
Sure.
And maybe during your time, rub some dirt on it. For some things, yes, you do just need to rub some dirt on it and move on down the road. There are other times where there are legitimate problems, and we have to address them. And I think.
But are there going to be people that take it to the other
once
extreme?
Again, that's the problem. Is oftentimes we react too far the other way. And everything now is a problem. Everything is this or there. This is a problem. That's a problem. That's a problem. Life can be a problem. Life is tough.
Right. Life is not easy.
We're lucky we live in a country that for the most part, most of our basic needs are met.
Right.
And life is fairly good. There are many places throughout the world I don't even know where I'm getting my next meal or a clean glass of water. I mean, it's a whole different ballgame.
You want to talk about anxiety and depression? How about that?
Yeah.
I mean,
let's add that to this.
It's incredible the amount of diversity there within that space to kind of work that. And I once again, the truth somewhere always lies somewhere in the middle, and you got to kind of sift through all the excesses of each particular group to kind of get to, this is a real problem. Nah, this is not really a problem. I think this is more what I call first world problems. But yeah, and I think a lot of it can be laid at the feet of we've become so boxed in. We've become our own little silos.
Yeah.
And there's very little interconnection in the way human beings were meant to be.
Right.
We were not meant to live in a digital world.
Yeah.
We're not.
Well, we're also, as soon as we, become of age, we move as far away from our parents and our grandparents as we can. We leave that safety net. And we go to places where people really don't care about us, that are accepting of what we are and what we're feeling. And you have to reforge these new connections, and sometimes they're not in our favor when it really was when we were way back there.
Yeah.
And now, who do you trust? Just because somebody says they're your friend doesn't mean they get your best interest at heart. And so that adds to the anxiety. That adds to the depression.
Yeah.
And you don't want to admit that, boy, I sure missed that time when I was with mom and dad.
Yeah.
Because we're raised now to move not down the street. You know, we were talking about that in my family, that I can remember living on the same street as my grandparents with my great-grandparents right down the road.
Mm-hmm.
Right there.
Well, our society used to be that way, and I don't know if that's good that we've adopted this idea that, you know, and I know that's kind of the American way to kind of blaze my own path and
because you go
my own independence
to Europe, and you have 3 generations of
it's a
people
whole
living in the
different
same
type of
house.
way of living, and I personally think that's a better way of living.
Oh, so do I. I would have that
than
in a minute.
we have today. I think that's idea of blazing your own path, and you know, I'm gonna go. I mean, I get it. I kind of understand the underlying thought behind that, but I don't know how healthy that is. It's sort of like the old saying, it takes a village to raise a child.
Yes, it does.
I truly believe that's how society worked for centuries.
Mm-hmm.
It was never this blazing out on my own and doing my own thing. It just, that's really a uniquely American thing. And it probably kind of ties in with the idea of going out on the frontier and taming the land.
Wild West.
Right. And
Well,
that part of that is ingrained in us as Americans.
Right. Like going to the big city and making it big.
Right, exactly.
No, see, back in my time was when you wanted to forge your own way, you ran away from home and joined the circus.
There you go.
And then
Well,
6 months to a year later, you got your ass back home where you were loved and you realized this is where I belong.
Ashley, I'm curious, in your advocacy of this issue, I mean, have you talked about how funding in the state nationally, have you really got into any of that kind of?
So so I'm also a ghostwriter, and so I do a lot of grant writing projects. And honestly, Louisiana does have the funding for this particular thing for mental health, but the issue is a lot of the programs that provide these mental health resources, they miss the mark a lot, because they offer, in retrospect, let's just say they offer therapy, but they don't offer group therapy. They don't offer support groups. They don't offer substance use support. So there's a lot of funding for like co-occurring disorders, funding for, you know, if they're using substances. But a lot of these organizations, they really miss the mark. They're really, and I hate to say this, you know, on this type of platform, but a lot of these organizations are really surface level organizations. Mm-hmm. They don't get into the real
meat.
need.
They don't get into the meat of it.
Yeah, they don't get into the real need. So, like, for a person that really needs help, they really have to kind of connect with organizations that are not in this state and then bring those resources back. Like, I really had to connect with someone in Texas so that I could understand what was going on. And so from that point, I've just been working hard in these spaces to just try to provide some type of advocacy and education, because there's a lot that mental health persons need to be able to feel. They need to be able to feel safe. And they need to be able to feel safe at work. They need to be able to feel safe going to their kids' school. They just need to be able to be in safe environments. And a lot of these organizations, they aren't really safe. I got admitted to the hospital from being honest with an organization, and they were like, yeah, we're going to PC you. And I'm like, I don't want to do that. But based upon the answers that I provided in my assessment, it showed that I needed to be admitted. And I was like, I wouldn't have never answered this particular way if I knew that this was grounds for me being admitted, you know. So it's the honesty, the transparency. You need to just be able to feel safe. Like, it's so many barriers in this space. But as it pertains to funding, there's so much funding that's available for mental health resources. You just have to have a collective, and you have to be real intentional. This surface level thing that we're doing, we like to say that we're doing the outreach and this, that, and the third, but outreach starts with the people who've been diagnosed and making sure that they have what they need. Not going to find other people to just hike the numbers up. We need to get to those people who are suffering, because some people are suffering in silence, and you know, suffering in silence most times leads to suicide. So if you don't find a safe space, it's unfortunate that your mind takes over your mind, and then it just ends bad for you. So to anyone like that maybe listening out there, you know, just find you a safe space. If you can't find a safe space, just, you know, reach out to 988. It's a local and national directory of resources for this type of demographic, for those suffering in silence. And, you know, you don't have to do it alone. And I just beg of you, like, you have to find someone that you can be safe and honest with, you know, outside of the doctors, because they have a job to do. At the end of the day, they have a job to do. So you just have to really have you a person that has your best interests at heart and that can advocate for you and speak the language.
Well, I'm gonna tell you, you know, when it comes to funding, you know, when I was kind of researching for this topic, I was kind of trying to go back to kind of some of the foundation of where we're at with this problem in the United States, but as I'm sure many of our listeners are aware, the Mental Health Systems Act of 1980 was really a landmark piece of legislation passed by the Congress. It was signed by Jimmy Carter, and basically provided grants to community health centers. So a lot of mental health centers were funded at that time through this act. In 81, Reagan, basically running on a platform that, when he was governor of California, really pushed to defund some of these mental health type programs. He was able to push through a Democratic-controlled House and a Republican Senate through the Omnibus Budget Reconciliation Act of 1981 that basically stripped out all these problems, because the Congress felt at the time that states were putting up enough money on their own to be able to handle mental health issues in their particular state. Which then led me to this other part about what are the most generous states and are the least generous states when it comes to mental health funding.
That's interesting.
The three highest ones is Maine, Pennsylvania, and Arizona, and they spend on an average about 5.6% of their budget on mental health. The stringent states, Arkansas, West Virginia, Idaho, Kentucky, Oklahoma, Louisiana, Delaware, that are the stringent, and I think they're around somewhere about 2% of their budget that goes to mental health. So it's definitely depending on where you live, and probably what access you have. And I would think for some of these states, I mean, I'm looking at Arkansas, Louisiana, West Virginia, Idaho, Oklahoma. A lot of these are not rich states. They're just not. I mean, I could, Maine, pretty affluent up there, Pennsylvania, it's a pretty rich state. And Arizona is a pretty well-to-do state.
Well, this statistic comes kind of, what you're saying there is from the end of 2022, that 4.6 million, nearly 79% of Louisiana citizens live in areas without enough mental health services.
I can see that. And they're talking about being rural versus urban. People out in the rural areas probably have very minimal access.
And then when you add this statistic to it, February of 2023, 39.1% of adults in Louisiana reported symptoms of anxiety and or depression disorder, compared to 32.3% of the adults in the U.S. So we're about, 6%, a little higher than 6% of the national average here in Louisiana.
Yeah, I mean, it's, and it just cost. I mean, I saw this particular this statistic here showing about cost. The average annual health care cost for a person going through a major mental illness is about $10,836 versus somebody with a chronic problem like diabetes.
Right.
It's $5,000. It's almost double
Yeah.
what it is. And knowing that they're right now projecting by 2025 a 31,000 clinician shortage of mental health professionals.
Dang.
So that's not a good combination of
No.
cost versus what doctors are available to do this.
Jeez, that's scary.
It's very scary.
Mm.
So I was curious in your background and you being an advocate, if have you really kind of got into funding and how much what's going on in that, because that's huge, because if you don't have money coming in to do this,
Yeah.
I mean nobody's going to do this for free.
Yeah.
I mean,
thankfully-
they're just because it takes a lot of schooling to go through to get somebody kind of where
Yeah.
they can actually help somebody.
You're right.
Mm-hmm.
You're right. So there's the LDH. They provide at least about $25 million to different organizations throughout Louisiana for mental health. But I honestly don't think that the funding gets into the hands of the people that are like boots on the ground. Tanja Miles with No Judgment, No Stigma, she does a really good job at meeting people where they are and like going into the colleges, going into the schools, and going into those high zoned areas of people who may be suffering with mental health issues. I think recently she just connected with a foundation that also provides, those mental health services. So group organizations like Ms. Miles's organization, they do a really good job, but a lot of the times when the funding trickles down, it doesn't always trickle down into those communities that are really in need, those undeserving populations that really need the help. They don't always get the funding because they kind of, I'm not going to say that they don't qualify, but they don't meet the mark and they don't look the part, but they're serving in their own capacity, but they just don't have all of the resources that are available to like those other organizations that, that spearhead things, but they're not in the community and they aren't really boots on the ground. So I just hope, that one day that there's equal access and equal opportunity for this type of funding.
Well, that kind of goes hand in hand. There's actually, I came across this particular book that kind of goes into like what you're saying. You're saying like there's money, but it's really not trickling down. It's not really having the impact. But it's a book called How the Mental Health Industry Fails the Mentally Ill. By DJ Jaff. I would love to have been able to read that book prior to this episode. But he goes into a lot of this exact issue of, there's money, but how does the money kind of equate to healing an individual?
Right.
And how that plays out. So, if anybody's interested in reading this book, it looked pretty good. If anybody has a passion about mental health, I'm sure it would be an eye-opener.
Yeah.
About the problem we're facing. So,
Wow.
good stuff.
Yep. Well, and then kind of I think we touched on a little bit in the episode, but also like you had mentioned the fact there's a homeless person that was also a former veteran, and there's a lot. And there's people. There's that list that you gave at the top of the episode, Jason, of like all the different
Disorders,
mental health disorders, and like it comes in so many different ways, and it has so many different shapes, and everyone's circumstances or contexts all may be different, but
Well, it's something that does not affect just one group.
Yeah.
Right.
This is
It's
one of
very
those things
diverse.
that literally can affect anybody.
Right.
At any
Socioeconomic, anything.
Right. I mean,
the simplest thing, even like my accident, bam.
Right.
Something I would never have associated to that accident. And that caught me completely blindsided.
And even like you talked about situational stuff, like there was a point in time where I got myself into a really bad situation and made bad financial decisions and was far from home. And I don't think I recognized it in the moment, but I did after the fact, after people had told me or after people had talked about
what you were doing.
Yeah, but I was I had went through a little depression. I went through a point in time where like it was hard for me to get out of bed in the morning. It was hard, like because of the fact I just felt so trapped. I felt so beat down. I felt so like just overwhelmed. Yeah, but it was more so the fact that I didn't feel adequate enough for like what was going on because of other such like circumstances. The people that was around me that were really not speaking very highly of me in that moment.
You see, I'm kind of glad you said that because we've talked about technology so much too.
Yeah.
And my accident, not always feeling adequate, and then you not feeling. But then how much does technology play in that too when technology, social media and things like that teaches us to compare our lives with somebody else? Right. And these young people today are just, oh, look at this person on TikTok or Instagram or whatever. And instead of being thankful and grateful for what we have, we're comparing our lives to somebody else that may not even be real.
Yeah.
And then we feel that much more worthless. And then we get addicted to the likes and the followers and things like that. And it just creates this perpetual cycle of, do I feel good enough?
Right. Am I worthy?
Am I worthy? Yes. Thank you.
For me, it was more so I was in a pretty mentally abusive relationship, and I couldn't get myself out of it because I was too stuck. I was in a different country. I was so far away from anything that was comfortable for me because I did that on purpose. I moved out of that country and I was living on my own and did that. But then I got into a bad relationship that was not good for me. And regardless of all that, I was in like I said, bad financial situation where I started to question my effectiveness as a man, really, or just as a person. And so, but again, like I said, I didn't see any of those things when I was in it. But getting out of it and hearing people talk about like how they're like, oh, I have depression, I have this, and this, or like I'm going through this situation. And I was like, wow, like there was definitely a situational aspect of that where like I was in just a bad situation, and and it was not good for me. But again, I was able to, I think, recognize the fact that I wasn't happy. And then I needed to get out of it. And I did have a family and a support group that I could come back to. And so whenever I did, and I got back on my feet, and I kind of was able to clear my head a little bit, it helped me see that. But I could see how someone that probably doesn't have that support group or can't see that or can't get themselves out of that situation, how it just becomes this kind of perpetual situation that they're in, which sucks.
And that leads me back to the attack on the American family. I believe that the American family is under such great attack right now that we're destroying that. Come back to who can you be safe with even your family. They've been splintering the family, and divorce rates are crazy, and mom and dad both have to work just to make ends meet now if mom and dad are still together. We have to do better than that.
You're right. For me, as a single woman with 3 children, it's been so overwhelming, this whole aspect. And I think a lot of people really don't understand that you have to extend grace, whether people are dealing with something or whether they're not. Like every day, like you said something earlier, you were like, can everybody just be kind? And like, it's really something that you should really try to live by because you really just never know what's going on. Like on the way here, I was at Chick-fil-A, and I'm real big on like picking people up if they need a ride because I just understand like not what it is not to have. And so the man was like, can you just get me some food out of Chick-fil-A? I was like, yep, order whatever you want, get whatever you want. And so the lady behind the counter was like, well, he just ate. I said, well, he may have been hungry again, and he may not know.
Or maybe want something a little bit later.
Yeah, he may not know when he's going to be able to eat again. So if he takes this opportunity to get as much food, to store up, then, let him do that. Because,
right. Or what if he was going to help somebody else? Because of your kindness, he was going to go help feed somebody else. Yeah. Why stop being judgmental?
Right.
Just be kind. I love the fact that you did that, and just be kind.
Yeah.
How simple.
It's so simple.
But it made him feel better. It made you feel better.
Exactly.
And some judgmental person can never receive the grace and the great feeling that you had because they'll never allow themselves just to experience that.
Right.
Because somebody has helped us.
Right.
Somebody's helped me. Maybe somebody's helped you. We've all been in that position. And how wonderful is that?
Yeah.
Just be kind.
It's just the way that's just the way that the world should look. Like we shouldn't go outside and like there's a stigma on like minding your own business. Like I think that has ruined the world because now people are afraid to talk about what they see happening, what's wrong, and like if you invade in somebody's privacy in a positive way, it's impactful. It's impactful if it's negative too, but you just got to think about every situation. Like it's just important to always try to be positive.
Well, I like what you said there. There's always an opportunity for grace and forgiveness. Use it.
Yeah.
Just use it. Be kind to somebody, because that smile you give somebody today, you don't know how that's going to affect them.
Right.
They may need it that day.
Right. I think Michelle's book is like The Light That You Carry. Is a book that she just released, and like she spoke and she said even a homeless person who has nothing of value could give you something that is priceless. And it just speaks to our culture, our world. Like everybody has a purpose, no matter, whether they're homeless, no matter what their situation is. You can always learn from somebody, and you can always, be in a room to change the atmosphere and the perspective of something negative and shift it to something positive.
Right.
Well, we got some help coming on the federal level. Need some money.
Yeah.
SAMHSA.
SAMHSA. It's a fiscal year 2025 budget seeks $8.1 billion.
$8.1 billion.
To support mental health and substance use services across the United States.
That's mainly the opioid money, but opioid is connected to mental health. So if you're going to focus on those two co-occurring disorders, SAMHSA is the way to go for the funding.
Yeah, okay. $612 million more than the agency's fiscal year 2023 enacted budget. So
help is on the way, people. Help is on the way.
Good.
Yeah. So it's some more money's coming. So I'm encouraged. I've always felt that was something that was probably a mistake made in the early 80s is waiting on states to fund these problems. And unfortunately for many states, budgets are tight. A lot of people forget the federal government can print money. State governments have to budget and have to balance, and everything's got to go to zero.
Yeah.
You can't deficit spend at the state level. The federal level you can. Yeah. So it's, I don't know, that brings up a whole host of other issues.
Yeah. Right.
But there seems to be some money coming down to the states to at least help. Because I know here there are some facilities that need to be opened.
Yeah.
To handle this, because I see it on a day-to-day basis now. These people are wandering in the streets. Yeah. And they are clearly have mental problems. Yeah. And they are a danger to themselves and possibly to others.
Oh, if we can send almost $200 billion to the Ukraine, maybe we could have kept some of that back for our homeless and our veterans and our people that, need help.
Yeah.
Maybe.
Think about if we just only sent half that. What do you think we could have done with $100 billion?
How about let's take care of what's in our backyard?
Thank you.
Yes. Amen.
Yes. Talked about that for a long time.
We've been saying that, but there's a lot.
From your mouth to God's and the politicians' ears.
There's no money to be made spending money here.
That's right.
Yeah. That's the problem. But there's money to be made elsewhere in the world.
Right. Can't get a kickback.
But just FYI, I found out what, I've always looking for these weird things to kind of talk about because, nobody would know. What are the top 10 most depressed countries that have the highest incidence of depression?
I would wager that the United States is probably up on that list pretty high, I think.
Believe it or not, we're ranked 29th.
Really? Oh, my gosh.
Where's China?
It's not in the top 10.
Really?
Let me see. The number one country here is Greenland.
Oh my gosh!
Really?
Greenland at 6.61%, and as far as they got like two statistics, like depression, and then all other mental health, and they're like at 17.85%.
Jeez.
Greenland
Is it because it doesn't? It's only daylight for 30 days out of the
Could
year.
be. I
30
don't
days of the
know.
month?
I mean, I found 2 is Greece.
Wow.
3 is Spain. 4 is Portugal. 5 is Palestine. I can kind of understand that.
Yeah.
6 is Tunisia. Bahrain at 7th. 8th, Morocco. 9, Iran. And 10, Lithuania.
Those are some of the most beautiful places on the planet.
Yeah.
Man, that's what I'm
Wow.
saying. I'm expected to see, some like China, not even top 10.
See, I would have thought it would have been more of the richer countries
Yeah.
that are never satisfied with what you have.
Yeah, I definitely
that would have been
thought-
more depressed.
Now look, with any of these statistics, a lot of these statistics are generated through surveys and,
The sample size.
the
may have been
sample
off.
size is going to probably play a lot into some of this stuff. So you got to take some of this with a grain of salt. But I found it interesting that Greenland.
Well, they also
Yeah.
say that 72.3% of statistics are made up. So,
Well, I just think it's the inherent nature of
Yes.
trying to gather statistics. Because, I mean,
Right.
like, how many times you're asked to do a survey
Yeah.
that you just ignore it?
Yeah.
And you don't want to do it because I don't feel like wasting the time.
or you don't want to put the right thing
know.
down in case someone would know who you are.
Right.
I mean, I don't know. I mean, as I said, it's interesting going through these topics and you start kind of diving into some of this stuff and, with this and that and everything else. But the United States is 29th.
Yeah.
So
Interesting.
we're not,
But
And
we
every-
also don't report that much, so I'm pretty sure we're higher.
well,
on
if
that
you
list.
try, if you're honest, I mean, that's what I'm saying. In a theoretical situation where if you get 100% of people reporting,
Oh yeah.
it would be very interesting the actual picture that would be painted.
Well,
Right.
be
For a
careful.
whole host
be,
of
Be
issues.
careful that doesn't come on the new census every 10 years. They do a new
Right.
census. Are you depressed?
Are
Do
you
you feel anxiety?
Yeah, they say in America, 21% of adults are experiencing a mental illness. It's about 50 million Americans.
Wow.
And it's generally some sort of anxiety,
Yeah.
some depression. And of course, they go into all this because, mental health, you're talking about substance abuse, you're
Of
talking
course.
about all the other things that go along with it. But there's a lot of information out there.
To kind of get us a little bit teased for the next episode, you also talked about, like veterans and PTSD is a whole nother thing as well.
That's right.
It kind of fits into all that situation as well. We have a guest on the next episode coming up as well, and we talk about a lot of that. We talk about some other stuff, but we also talk about, veterans and mental health in that space and what all that means and looks like. And so that's going to be, like I said, we're going to try and keep a little theme going here for this month, and that's going to be our
Absolutely.
next episode.
Absolutely.
Is there anything else you guys want to touch on for this before we land the plane?
I think
You have anything else you'd like to add before we close up?
Okay, thank you so much for
Yes.
coming on.
Thank you,
and
Ashley.
talking
Thank
about
y'all
it.
for
What
It's been a
what
great conversation.
What an
Yes.
absolutely delightful conversation. This was
Exactly.
amazing. I hope that creating a safe space here for us to talk, I hope that inspires some other people maybe to create some safe spaces. And I don't mean this, I need a safe space. I'm talking a real, genuine safe space for someone to feel comfortable to deal with this.
Right,
I'm glad we did this.
Thank you guys for doing it.
no problem.
Thank
Well-
you for a big drive out here too. So.
For anybody out there who wants to try and reach out to us or talk to us, give us some suggestions. We have a Facebook page /Retrospect Pod where you can send us more short form answers. But if you want to, we have an email address, getoffendedtogether@gmail.com, where you can send your more long form responses and share some stories and give us some feedback on what you also been going through in this Mental Health Awareness Month. But anyways, until next week, thank you so much for listening. Bye-bye.
Goodbye, everyone. God bless.
Goodbye, everyone. Make sure you're taking care of your mental space.
Hey, thank you for hanging out today with us and this great conversation. You're the best. Peace.